So welcome to the Unstructured to Structured Data with ChatGPT webinar. I'm Gordon Jones, the Chief Operating Officer of Decision, and my partner in crime today is Ashley Wilson, the Senior Pre-Sales Engineer.
Hello. Thank you for coming.
Hello and welcome. All right, a few shameless plugs. If you want to learn more about Decisions, you can attend one of our Submerse training events. Our next training event is next week in Sydney, Australia. It's not too late to sign up. Hop on a plane. Great venue overlooking the Opera House and the bay there, so you don't want to miss it. If you can't quite make it next week, November 14th through 16th, we'll be doing another training event in Dallas, and all this information is on our website. I'll also plug a couple of our upcoming webinars. In September 14th, we have a webinar about creating a chatbot using your own data with ChatGPT. This is really slick. We're using it internally right now. We've built a chatbot against our use case data from Salesforce, and we've linked it up with Slack. And it was built within a week, and it's really cool. So don't miss that one, September 14th. Later in the month, we'll be presenting another similar type of use case, but we fill out hundreds of security questionnaires, RFPs, analyst questionnaires. And what we're going to do is take ones that we've completed. Here again, create a little application that can look up previous answers that have already been vetted, discussed, and to make that process a whole lot easier. Also coming in October, we're going to take our user manual, like employee manual, run that through a large language model to show you how you can search user manuals, process manuals, things like that. So there's a whole lot more to come here. It's still early days with these large language models, but we're working feverishly on adding capability. And so new stuff will be coming all the time. So in case you missed it, there's been three other topics that we've done recently. Document extraction with ChatGPT. What we did is we automated the invoice process. So from when a company sends us an invoice, we grab it, we OCR it, we send the data to ChatGPT. ChatGPT cleans it up, sends it back. Then we send it back, asking a bunch of questions, and it's a series of back and forths. The net result, though, is that we completely automated invoices from our email inbox into our QuickBooks. So you don't want to miss that. Go back and watch that. It's available on our website. We had a couple more that have other interesting use cases, and I just talked about the ones upcoming. So again, you can find all of these on our decisions.com/videos. We've also just launched a new white paper that can be found at the address here, or again on our website. So if you want to learn more about automating with AI. If during this webinar you have any questions, just drop them in the Q&A, drop them in the chat. We'll either get them on the fly or we'll answer them at the end. And before I get in, I also want to announce, it was interesting just this past week, Gartner, they create these hype cycles. So we are now officially at the absolute peak. The generative AI is at the peak of the hype cycle. What does that mean? It means everybody's talking about it now, and shortly, the next stage is the trough of disillusionment, right? So you read about it, people talk about it all the time, but now's when they'll really start complaining heavily about it. You know, it hallucinates who started the Peloponnesian War or whatever, right? And yes, those things happen. And yes, it's not going to be an end-to-end take, take this job. But what I've seen here at Decisions over the last 2 months and what keeps me so excited is that the things that it does well, it does really well. And if you just narrow the task and give it a small task and tell it to do something, it does it and it nails it and it nails it every time. And the Decisions platform is ideally suited to orchestrating and automating the calls back and forth. And I'm super excited about it. And I'm super excited about what you're about to see. So, what I'm going to do, the agenda here, a brief background to Decisions for those that don't know what we do. Going to talk about how to open the OpenAI module where a lot of these tools sit. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Wilson, who's going to present this unstructured to structured data. And I'll get more into that a little later. And then again, I mentioned the 3 upcoming webinars. They'll be really cool. So get those on your calendar and make sure to watch those as well. So first, what is Decisions? We're a no-code software development platform with a rule engine, a flow engine, a UI builder, and these are the 3 most common use cases. So a standalone rule engine and decisioning platform. So think about medical claims, think about insurance or loan underwriting, and these are very rule heavy applications. And the whole idea here is to get these rules out of stored procedures, out of custom code, and put them into a graphical user interface that the people who know the business can edit, maintain, if not build these rules themselves. And we're an enterprise class rule engine. We run literally billions of transactions a day for the organizations that you see listed here. This next use case is the one that you're going to see today, and this is our most common use case, and what we're best at is sitting between the cracks of various software applications and services and integrating and running business logic and workflows to automate these processes and engaging end users when necessary. So whether it's ChatGPT, Salesforce, SAP, NetSuite, we're fantastic at sitting beside these large applications and helping you automate complexity. And we can also be used to build full-on end-to-end applications. Okay, that's Decisions. That's what we do. And everything you're going to see here today utilizes our OpenAI module. You can find that within Decisions. Go to Features. You'll see the module. You click on it. You install it. Once you install it, you go to the settings, and you'll see OpenAI, and you can edit the settings. And here is where you would enter the API key from OpenAI. So you need an OpenAI account. You just go to their website, log in, give them a credit card. They give you some free tokens, or is that what they call it? Tokens. So you get some amount of free that actually go a long way. And even everything you see today is like fractions of a cent. It's these calls are not expensive. So you put your API key in there, you save it, and then bingo, you'll see in the integration sections in Decisions, we've got a number of steps in there. From there, you just drag, drop, and this create chat completion step is probably the one you'll use most often. But there's more. And if you have any questions about any of them, or you download this module and try it yourself, reach back with any questions. This question comes up regularly. Oh, what's the data security with ChatGPT, with OpenAI? And so they don't. If you're using the API, number one, they don't use your data to train the model, right? And number two, they're SOC 2 Type 2, GDPR, HIPAA compliant. So they've gotten all the certifications. they're in as trusted an environment as with Google or Microsoft. So they've got the certs, and they say they don't use your data to enhance or use that to build the model. And you have a number of user controls if you don't want them to do anything with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is set up the use case here and then turn it over to Ashley. And what we're going to do here is take a CSV file that's got some crappy data, and we'll show you what crappy data looks like, and you'll all recognize it because you all see it every day. And basically, extract this data and use a prompt which has already been created and crafted, send it to ChatGPT, and then we'll update it in decisions and in a database. So this is a fairly simple process, and it unless you've done this kind of cleanup work before, you don't realize how cool this is. And maybe on the next slide. So here's an example. Sometimes you get a spreadsheet, and maybe it's got, first, last, address. But I think you've all seen those spreadsheets where stuff starts to get jumbled. The data is there, but it's in the wrong column. And in my prior life, I was actually the chief data officer of a pharmaceutical services company. And we had 29 companies all selling services to the pharmaceutical industry. And we were trying to pull in data from these 29 companies every month. And it looked like this. There was duplicates, there was data. The dates are the worst because different systems have dates in different formats. And then oftentimes you get these downloads and the columns would be shifted, and you literally had to copy, paste, move, cut, paste to get the addresses in the right column. So this is just a quite common use case. And what we're doing is taking the ugly data, just sending it to ChatGPT with a prompt like this, telling it what the data looks like and what the JSON structure that we want to get back in return. Then we also want to clean up that data because we want to structure the state format, because you often get somebody types out New York, somebody uses the 2-letter designation. So this is just a small example of the type of cleanup that ChatGPT can do that programmatically actually is very hard. So when you have data that's in the wrong column, having tried to do this in my past life with R, there's so many things that could happen that programmatically it's very hard to clean this up. But a human looking at it recognizes, okay, that's a date, that's a street, and can move it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Wilson to do the live show.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm going to share my screen here. So let's look at the unstructured to structured data workflow here that you're looking at. So that simple 5-step process is all encapsulated in this workflow now. And we have a couple of these sub-processes that we're going to be able to get a much more refined look at as soon as I start debugging. So we can take a look under the hood to see how Decisions takes that unstructured data and then restructures it for us to use Gordon's language, turn ugly to pretty, if you will. So what I'll do is I'll take one file. And in this case, I'm going to use just a single record of John Doe here. So John Doe, our good friend, we know and love. We have all this jumbled data for him being in California. We have his zip code in all the wrong places. His age is somewhere in there. So let's take this file of John Doe, upload our record. And what will actually happen in this workflow is ChatGPT is taking that entire unstructured data, because when we were looking at it just a minute ago, John Doe, his address was all over the place. But now we have this lined up for us in a nice, neat structure that we use Decisions to take that response from ChatGPT into this table that you're seeing now. But to take it a step further, because we know sometimes the zip codes could be 9 digits, it could have a hyphen in it. Or in our case, the state is not abbreviated in the way that we might need it for our structure. So we can then further transform that data. And now we have a much more regulated state. Data cleanup that might have taken me maybe 5 minutes for one record, but hours and hours if I have a huge data set, maybe only took me 30 seconds to a minute to execute here. So let's submit. And let's see what ended up happening in the background here. So each of these black boxes as these sub-processes deals with different parts of the OpenAI module. So the first process that runs took my record, grabbed all of the necessary fields, and it created this prompt for me. So if I look into this ChatGPT module step here, I can look at this execution. And here I have my friend John Doe. And I can see this data gets passed in dynamically into the ChatGPT prompt. And then further, it brings it back to me as a message from my assistant that lets me know, hey, Ashley, cleaned up this data for you. Here you go. Nice on a silver platter for me. And then even further, if I needed to transform that state again, now I'm saying, hey, ChatGPT, thanks for cleaning up this data for me. Could you just do me an extra solid, take another prompt for me, and take that California and give me back the correct abbreviation. So I passed in California from my previously cleaned up data, leveraged decisions to map that data here, give me back my abbreviation, and I can see right in my response, my CA is here waiting for me.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in here. A couple points that we've learned is that when you see, we've done this twice. You could have tried to do this with one prompt, but we've learned that the more questions that you try to get it answered with one prompt, sometimes it hangs up, sometimes it doesn't get it right. But if you break up your tasks a bit, it just nails it. So if you kind of break it up a little bit, limit it, do a few back and forths, the automation is incredible. So in our previous webinar where we were doing invoices, we had a set of questions, we got some high level information. We made another call later on to get the line items on the invoice, and it just works better that way.
It's almost one bite at a time kind of approach. And what's even further, go ahead, Gordon.
I was going to say, we did have a question about the zip code. It's a good question about whether it's New York or the state is wrong or the zip code. In our standard demo, we do a call out to the USPS to get the accurate address. So for something like that, and we even discussed adding that at the end of this, if we should send it out to the USPS to clean up the address. We do that all the time. So some things ChatGPT may be good at, but it may not be as good at addresses as the US Postal Service or Google. So some things I would use ChatGPT for, other things maybe not.
That's what the rest of the platform is for. Use
That's
that
right.
cleaned up data, send it through, give us a regulated address, rubber stamped by the US Postal Service, and then have it confirmed. Here's just our last stop. And what we're doing is taking all of that data and actually saving it to this external database here. So it's one thing to be able to transform or take that unstructured data and transform it into much more structured data, but it's another to then save it into an external database. So I have this example here. If I wanted to select that call that was made, here I have my friend John Doe imported into my database for me, which then starts the question, which I know you're all thinking is, Ashley, what if I have an entire list of people? Maybe I'm not just working with one John Doe at a time. Maybe I have a list of 10, 100, 1,000 people. What then? What we can do is we can take a list of records. In this case, I have this list of records that gives me a host of jumbled up data. And you saw a preview of this earlier in the previous slides, but you can see that the names, maybe they're in the right spot, but there's a lot of other things happening for this Jessica Lee or Lee Jessica, whoever. The address comes before the zip code. It's a mess. But what I can do is take all of those records, use ChatGPT, the same exact prompts. So I'm just passing in the data dynamically for the prompt. I'm having decisions iterate through every one of those lines for each of these items, run this prompt, and then give me that response back. And then what I end up with will be all of my cleaned up data that is just waiting for me to transform it here. So we can see, sure, my John Doe shows up since that's on my list of already completed. But now I've taken all of that extra data and lined it up nice and neat for myself with a data structure that I made in decisions. I could make it however I wanted to, even adding an extra field in here if I need to accommodate. And then just taking that extra step and transforming it as well. So that way, instead of New York, Texas, Florida, Colorado, I get all of my abbreviations, just like I'd expect. Gordon, how long would this have taken you previously in your previous life?
A whole lot longer than that. And the complexity of the again getting data in the wrong columns and cleaning that up is just really hard programmatically because it's never consistent.
That's right. Consistency is the key too. And when you leverage decisions along with an OpenAI module like we do, that becomes a lot more easy of a task. And only maybe 4 or 5 clicks, that's not too bad.
The a couple questions here. The question was asked, how are the prompts generated? Are they pre-built? And the answer here is no. So there's a bit of you do have to play with the prompt, test out prompts, and there's a bit of iterative process there to figure out what the right prompt is. And then, but once you've got it and you enter it in, it's saved in decisions. You can reuse that prompt, and we just cycle through with the variables that get inserted in the right place, and you can do full-on automation from there. But there is a bit of work to figure out the right prompt. And again, it was pointed out that some of the zip codes are wrong for where they are, and these were randomly generated actually using ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a random data generator, so some of that would be wrong. Another question, is this safe for sensitive data input? And again, I mentioned earlier, OpenAI, using the API as we are here, they do not use any of the data for training the model, so they don't keep it. And number 2, they're SOC 2 Type 2 HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant. So they have all of the data privacy certifications that we rely on with any of these other vendors. And there's also a data processing agreement that they have that you can sign to ensure that they're not using your data. And it's as safe as it would be with any other vendor with those certifications. Another question. What if there was, handwritten data on the PDF file? We have not tested that. I know some of these models can take images, and you can answer questions about an image. So the honest question is, I don't know how it would handle that. We have a question about
question to see the prompt. So this is just the display of that prompt here.
Ashley, could you open up where the prompt is? This is what it looks like, what's sent and received back. Maybe which step, do you know which step that prompt lives in?
I do. We have this create ChatGPT prompt specifically. And what this is really asking for is it really just gives back a string to ChatGPT, but this merged list of strings is what would be the line item for the records that gets sent through. So this merged list of strings is sent in, and then we hard code the rest of it, the output of the response in a JSON array. This is what the data should look like when it's returned back to us. And this exact data structure we've just made in decisions, so it looks nicer in that table right at the very end of the flow running, so we can see it all lined up turning that ugly data into pretty data here. But the dynamic piece is smaller than you might think. It's just this piece right here, this merged list of strings that we take for each item that comes into this prompt, which is this looping step here. So we can think for those 9 records every single time.
I mean, could you open that back up again,
Sure.
Ashley? This merge text editor, we use this for creating like emails and do the same thing where you can insert variables into the email to send out. And it just so happens that this also works extremely well for crafting the right prompt and then using the variable to cycle through the iterative automation. So not only is it here for prompts, but that same merge text editor works just as well for emails, creating documents, those sorts of things. Somebody asked about the pricing. Right now, everything you see you can do with our OpenAI module. We're not charging anything for that. We are looking at adding a vectorized database and a model that all sits on our server, such that for super high data privacy concerns, where you really don't want to, where everything you want to live on one box, and we'll likely need to charge extra for that. And that'll be coming soon. It's not available right yet, but our dev team is working on that. But everything you see here, you could do yourself. And if you would like a copy of what you see, reach out to sales@decisions.com. And we'd be happy to get you a download of this work. And someone asked how will it confirm an address at a global level? There are a number of services. So the USPS address service works obviously in the United States, but Google also has a service where they will do global address validation. There's a charge for that, but it's a service that Google will provide. All right, Ashley, any other? Oh, one more point I want to make here is that okay, in this example we've got 9 or 10. I do want to point out that one limitation to these large language models is the size of the data set that you can send, and it's a bit of trial and error because they measure things in like tokens. So there's a certain number of characters. OpenAI has a limit of like 4,096. And so if you have a super long spreadsheet, you may have to cut it up. And obviously it depends on how many rows and how many columns. So there's no perfect formula. There are new models that come out. There's one called Claude by a company called Anthropic. And we will be testing with that one as well, but that can take up to 100,000. So some of these limitations I expect will grow over time so that you wouldn't necessarily have to cut those up. But don't be surprised if it errors out and tells you that the file's too big and that you have to cut your data up.
To massage that data. Speaking of, Gordon, while you're answering questions, I just wanted to show another example of how we could take even more, if it were possible to even make this data more of a mess or more unstructured by adding extra fields than what we're asking for. We can still use the OpenAI module to fit in neatly into our structure that we've made. So if we look at the data, Jane Smith, for example, I have some extra pieces here. Looks like we have a date of birth. Some of these, there's another date of birth. Some of them even have a gender listed as well. But if I just need to filter the data or organize it in such a way where I'm looking at the fields that matter, using that same prompt, we can leverage ChatGPT to give us back, even if we're sending in the data for Jane Smith all the way to Olivia Taylor, we can get all of that data back sanitized and structured for us in the way that we want. And then submit it and save it again into that external database if needed. And that's our unstructured to structured data example.
All right, and a few more questions have been coming in. There was a question about, yeah, what if clients are not comfortable using ChatGPT, and they want to, and for compliance and privacy reasons, they don't want to do that, and they want to deploy it within one environment, even on a client's own network. We're working on that. We're working on a vector database and a large language model that can be deployed just within one data center. So there's no calls to these outside models. There's some of these open source LLMs and models that can be deployed. We're testing them right now. I saw some results yesterday from our internal dev team that are super exciting. So I would expect within 1 to 2 months, you will be hearing some announcements for us with options to run a model self-contained. Either we host or it can be hosted on-prem. There'll be likely an additional charge for that, but that's coming very soon. I've seen the test results, so this isn't some long-term product roadmap. I think we'll be able to come out with something fairly quickly. A lot of questions. Okay, there's questions about how can ChatGPT help with analyzing balance sheets and capturing amounts in Excel. What I would say is this is an iterative learning process. So you do have to you can almost play with the web interface, with prompts, with files to get something that works. And if it's just a one-time thing, that may be all you need to do. What we're designed for is the whole automation piece. If this is something that somebody's doing every month, once a week, or constantly, I mean, that's where the beauty of this, because I think Ashley and Tyler worked on this together in what, I think 1 to 2 weeks, maybe a week's worth of work here.
Safe to say.
So this little data cleanup, I mean, again, it looks simple, but actually when you think about how you would do this any other way, it ends up being very complex. So this is the type of automation that I think ChatGPT is great at. It's the things that a human looking at the data understands which data piece is what. But programmatically, that's really hard to come up with all of the rules and the ways with which the data can be jumbled. And then there was a question about, validating the accuracy of the output, especially when dealing with complex prompts. That's a good question. And what I would say is, never trust anything explicitly. I think and that's where, decisions is great. We have the guardrails and the rule engine to test and validate what's been done. I know from our own experience with the automating our own internal invoices is that we still rely on a human to check. So at the end of the process, still somebody in the finance team opens up the invoice, looks at the data, and can validate whether it's accurate or not. So definitely when it's important and you need to get it right, it's helpful to have those human eyes on it. And you may never get to 100% automation, but going from 0 to 80 or 0 to 90 can save an awful lot of time. So just for example, the invoice example I was talking about, internally, it was 1 day a week of one of our employees' time. So basically 1 week a month. So with an automation that we built within 2 weeks, we automated a week a month or 12 weeks of employee time. And when you start stacking these things up, it can really, really add up. Here's another question. Is the creation of a vector database critical if you have massive amounts of data in SQL? It's extremely useful. I think this would be a longer discussion based on what is the data, how often you would be hitting it, how often you would be searching it. But if you want to search, do like semantic search where you're trying to find, you have a lot of unstructured data and you want to find the closest match to the question, the vector database is absolutely the way to go. And we are, as mentioned, we're building out a tool within Decisions to save it to a vector database. The 2 webinars next month will cover that topic very well. The chatbot that we've created using our own Salesforce data, which we've vectorized, we'll cover that whole topic. So we'll have a whole hour on that in a couple weeks' time. Yeah, one more time on the data limitation. So yes, there is a data limitation. It is something to the order of 4,000 tokens. What's a token? You can read all about it on the internet. But they do convert like text to tokens, and there are token limits. It's about 4,000 for ChatGPT, which is probably a couple pages of text. So if you have long spreadsheets, you'd have to split it up. At least today, these things change very quickly. Okay, I think that's about all we have. Is that right, Ashley?
We actually have one more about transforming some data.
Let's do it.
Yeah, if we want to check out how we can take even more unstructured data in the form of some dates, because if everybody feels the same about date format that I do, we know that it's usually the most uncomplicated thing ever, right? Nobody ever asks for dates in different formats. But in the cases that they do, which if you didn't catch the tone, is most of the time, we can actually use ChatGPT to regulate the dates in a format that we decide. So say, for example, I have all of these given dates. All of them are pretty random. But I could take, for example, the Salesforce query language and say, instead of having these dates in this month, day, year structure, I want them to be returned back to me in this the SQL query language, if you will. So now, and again, when you start having letters in the dates, we know that this is going to be a very special kind of format. But ChatGPT, we can leverage it to take any dates that we pass in and give us back this correct format. So even when it comes to reformatting data types, you could even use this with the previous flow that we just looked at, right? Taking those dates in, reformatting and transforming that data, not maybe just that state abbreviation. But let's try another one. See if we had SAP as an example. We could take those exact same dates, so all the same dates as they used before in that SQL query, and we can use the SAP one instead and get back this result too. And in this case, it'll give me back an SAP result for the year, month, date as well. So if we need to include some hyphens, maybe change around where the year and the month lie around to, it's another way that we can transform that data. And then the list goes on. Now, this all lives for us, whichever format I choose. It all lives in this table that you're seeing here, this truth table, where we can create this prompt. So what was selected in that form? Well, in the first iteration, I chose the SQL language. And this merged in brackets that you see is a customized prompt for ChatGPT to take and give us back the regulated address. So even if we wanted to take a deeper look into that here, this actual table that we made in Decisions, we can leverage the platform to say, based on the selection, I would like to have a specific prompt generated for me. And here's that editor again that we were talking about. So given my list, make sure that this particular language here is the difference. This is what I would like returned back to me. And we can see if I went into any of these other prompts here. Same principle. So how many different ways could you use this? Not even just for the date. Maybe if we do need to have those state abbreviations regulated, be really simple to set up a user interface for somebody to make that selection from, and almost make a really customized ChatGPT query without anybody really ever having to type in the prompt themselves. You can have decisions make that prompt for you in a way that we've tested.
And interestingly enough, the question was asked, how can you validate or check data? Here's another example of how you could, using the rules, right? So you can get the returns back, run it through a set of rules just to check. Because actually, the process to convert dates are some of the hardest things to handle. And
tell me about it.
they're very tricky. And so you can have ChatGPT do the tough work and then run it against a rule set to validate, check, ensure that things are accurate, and move on. I will put in a plug for our next webinar next month. And this is this ChatGPT embeddings preview. So we've built and this is a way to store data in a vector representation of words, phrases, sentences, documents, and it makes semantic search, content recommendations, chatbots, and this one is really cool. So September 14th, get it on your calendar, and this is an exciting one. If you don't want to wait till then and you'd like to see an overall product, I'd highly encourage you to sign up for a demo on our website. You can specifically ask for Ashley Wilson, and you can sign up there on our website, and we'll walk you through the product with an engineer, either Ashley or somebody just like her. And it's only an hour. You can learn all about the product, what it does, the full set of capabilities. So I'd highly encourage you to do that. So again, you can schedule a demo online, get the white paper. I'll plug the events again, the training events. We have one in Sydney, one in Dallas coming up. And if you have any questions at all, sales@decisions.com. Do we have any final questions? I think going once, going twice. All right. Thanks. Join us next time, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.